So with us right now, I'd like to introduce Kelli Strickland, who is the Executive and Artistic Director here at the Widener Center. So I don't know if I should be welcoming you or if you should be welcoming us.
Welcome.
So Kelli is also an actor, and in 2017 was a nominee for the Joseph Jefferson Award. So Kelli, thank you for joining us today.
I just love that you dug that little tidbit up.
Oh, we Googled. We Googled.
That's fun. Thanks. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the arts and culture sector in Greater Green Bay. And Isabel just had me holding my heart there for a minute. Oh, goodness. That was so lovely. Mm-hmm. And to Bear's point, just being in the presence of people making art, there's just nothing like it. And I can't wait until we're all back here.
No doubt.
So I'm a return steam engine speaker as well. And it's interesting to revisit this topic in light of COVID. And I want to take a moment just to frame that the data that I'm going to share is pre-COVID, and the arts and culture sector is now at 60% unemployment. Those are pretty staggering numbers, and that doesn't even account for a lot of the freelance artists who make their living from gigging, right? Because we're not capturing that data. So when we're talking about the financial devastation of a sector, and again, please, this is not to minimize the staggering numbers around health and the loss of life that we were just discussing, but we have a sector that is, I don't want to say on life support because all of arts and culture is defined by resilience. And that's why, I go back to this phrase, the artist is gonna art. But when we're trying to evaluate the health of our arts and culture sector, what are we talking about and how do we evaluate that? So there are places that we can go to look. And I think that this is a graphic that comes from SMU Data Arts, so you can find them at culturaldata.org. And they do a lot of data collection to evaluate the vibrancy of communities. And they've laid out this ecosystem of the arts. So at the heart of it, at the center of it, you have your individual artists, surrounded by your arts and culture organizations, which are often providing opportunities for artists to present their work, although we know that artists find ways to express and find ways to earn money in a bunch of different ways: social enterprise, freelancing, social or entrepreneurship. Around that, you have the community, which is, of course, an important piece. In our community, we have a lot of entities like our economic development entities, like On Broadway and Old Main, that are very interested in artistic activity for kind of flipping that arts lever of economic development, which we'll talk a little bit more about. And then finally around that, government support. So in other countries, that is actually a huge part of how arts is subsidized, less so in America. So we take a look at all of these factors to see how healthy we are. And I just want to share a little bit about our region. So the first thing, you're not going to be able to read this whole list, and that's okay. It's really for visual effect. This is a list of all 50 states, and it is an indicator of government funding for the arts. And I will save you from reading it because Wisconsin is actually 50th on this list. We're actually dead last in the nation for government funding of the arts. It's 14 cents per capita. At the top of the list, I think just to rub it in, is right next door, Minnesota. It's not even like it could be somewhere really far away, but it's our neighbor. So that doesn't actually bode very well for us when we're looking at our health, but there are other things to look at. You can, so that's just that outer ring, right? But there's another place you can go to look, and this is a map. This is a vibrancy index map, and I should give credit to that list of states and the evaluation on, or assessment on government funding is from the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies. I wrote it down because I knew I'd forget. So this is another assessment tool that comes out of SMU Data Arts, and this is a vibrancy map, an arts vibrancy map. So what you can do is you can actually go to this website and find your county and click on it and get some information about how your community rates. And you can click on, drill down into some of these indicators. And they're looking at a lot of different things. They're looking at census data. They're looking at 990s from arts organizations. They're looking at arts dollars being reported on income tax returns. They're looking at a lot of aggregate data to arrive at this. So in our indicators, I want to point something out, right? So you can see Green Bay there. Actually, there's a little star on our map right at the bottom of the bay. And we fall in this 80 to 89 rating, which is, I think, after you look at the first piece of data, you go, oh, that's not so bad. That's not so bad. That's good. So why is that? Well, part of it is if you look at our arts providers, we have 91 reporting out, right? So again, that's just reporting out through data that we can collect. That's not our freelance artists, which we have a very vibrant community, of which Kent is an important contributor. We're also looking at arts dollars. Now, we don't get as great of an index there. So that's, are people spending money on the arts? How well supported financially are our arts providers? Not as well as we would like. And then you look at government support, and that's not so great. We know that. And then you look at socioeconomic factors that tend to indicate a vibrant arts community and the makings of one. So we're right neck and neck with Outagamie and our little bit below Door County. That's not surprising. We know that Door County is has a lot of arts and culture activity, but it's not as bleak as I think sometimes people think. We have the fixins here. Right? It's really about harnessing the fixing so that we can start to blow it out of water and move into that dark green area. So how do we do that? No, not how. That's next. First, why does it matter? It matters for a lot of reasons, not just because I care about the arts. There's tremendous research around economic development especially, and this is a huge topic in our area. Talent attraction and talent retention. You talk to any business owner, you talk to anyone who is concerned about the economic vitality of our area, and that's what they're talking about. We know that the arts are a vital lever to pull in this area, and that's why our economic development organizations, like on Broadway, like Old Main, that's why we have a dedicated arts district. It's because this is my favorite data point ever. About might be 15 years ago now, there was a big survey that the National Endowment for the Arts ran, and they interviewed hundreds of thousands of people who said that it was somewhat to very important to them that an arts organization be within a mile of their home. And then the next question was, would you go? And 40% of them were like, maybe. Right? So we have this relationship to the arts where even if we don't see ourselves involved in it, we know that it says something about us, right? And that's just, to me, an interesting little bit of psychology in our relationship to the arts. We want it around, right? We know that it's not. We know that it says something. We know that it's great for our economy. We know that it's great for restaurants. It's great for hotels. It's great for all of these things. And despite whatever people's personal relationship to is, they still are like, no, but I want it there. I want to make sure it's there. So economic development. Social emotional wellness and learning, these are two very important areas that the arts can contribute in a mammoth way. We know that K-12 students especially, with arts integrated into their education, they take care of that whole person, right? So alternative learners have an opportunity. English as second language students have a way in to share stories and connect. Students feel seen, they feel able to express themselves, and as we're really looking at mental health of our young people right now, the arts are a powerful tool to address this. And finally, I would say civic pride, right? It's the difference between saying this is where I live and this is my home. And I think that kind of goes back to my earlier point about the homeowners, right? I want it near me. It has something to do with our identity. So how do we do it? We do it through not particularly exciting strategies. I think they're super fun, but convening and planning. Just like anything else, you have to invest in it, you have to come up with a strategy, and you have to execute on it. The arts is tough, right, to get us all together. We don't have natural opportunities to intersect all the time. So this is what we've done in our community. About 3 years ago, we held the first convening of what has now been maybe 8, I think, of what we call the Art Squad, affectionately. And it's a no barrier to participation convening that happens, we hope, quarterly. COVID has maybe taken a little steam out of our steam engine, but we're getting back on the tracks. A lot of railroad metaphors here. And we get together and we talk about what we need, and we talk about what we're good at, and hopefully we're building relationships to collaborate, and hopefully we're sharing good ideas, and we're getting to know each other so that we have our own community of makers, arts educators, artists, artistic entrepreneurs, all those good things. So Art Squad is a great step. Out of Art Squad came the Bay Area Arts and Culture Alliance. And this is a group that is dedicated to keeping our eye on these impactful assessment tools to say, how are we doing? Right? So not just getting out there and saying the arts are great. Lots of people think the arts are great. This is really about leveraging the arts and demonstrating, and true advocacy is what we're talking about, demonstrating to our community the importance of it and making sure that the infrastructure and support is there so that ecosystem is healthy, right? We may not have the strongest outer layer, so let's concentrate on that second layer. Let's make sure that our individual artists have a way out of this. 60% unemployment is staggering, and again, that's not capturing our freelance artists. Who, many of them have had to turn to alternative careers. I know lots of stories of that, and we're all just hoping that they come back. If you want to know more about Art Squad, Bay Area Arts and Cultural Alliance, which is in kind of its nascent forms, I'm happy to share more information.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I wrote down like 7 more questions than the ones I previously had, and then I'm getting a ton of questions online here, so I'm going to get to it right now.
Let's do it.
So the first question that kind of came up is in the tail end of your presentation is like, so you got the Art Squad, you got the Bay Area Arts and Culture. So how do those entities unfold into more art? Like, how do those things actually make more art for communities and our area?
Yeah, so they're part of a 2-step system. The Art Squad is really about finding a way to connect easily. Again, no barrier to participation. That's really important. We can't be putting roadblocks in the way of getting in touch with our artists. We can't be charging them money. We've got to be able to get to them. We've got to be able to hear from them. So that's just, that broader swath of people is just, that's the voice, right? That's the voice we need to capture. Bay Area Arts and Cultural Alliance is that advocacy piece of it. And that's about making the case. It's about making the case to the Chamber of Commerce, right? So when I first got here in 2018, I think I went to a breakfast where they talked all about innovation and this economic development plan, and the word arts and culture did not come up once, not once. So I think that's changing, right? We have some great advocacy now at the Chamber. We're starting to have these conversations, but it's about, it's the responsibility to get there and saying, have you brought arts to the table? Not as an afterthought, not as a, oh, you know, it would be nice as if we brought Sweet Isabel in and asked her to play because it's going to be good exposure for her. No, you're going to pay Isabel, first of all. And second of all, it's not an afterthought, right? We're taking her needs seriously. So it's that advocacy piece of it. And it's getting the data and putting it in front of people so that they understand that even though they may not go to the Widener Philharmonic, it's still important that our community has a symphony. Right?
Okay, so entities like BACA, the Bay Area's Arts and Cultural Alliance, they're going to make the case to these other big institutions that have access to money to start driving those dollars toward artists and towards the development of artwork.
Investment is a huge part of it. There's no doubt about it, right? I mean, we don't affect change without investment and planning. That's a part of it. But I think what often ends up happening in the arts and culture world is that, especially for independent artists, this is a hard life, right? It's tough to make a living in the arts. So when you are then, if you then take on the responsibility for advocating for yourself You're going to run out of time, you're going to run out of energy, and so you need an entity to do that on your behalf. And yes, it's about soliciting resources, but it's also about the recognition and the respect of the form, right? It's also about that invitation to the table. It's also about emphasizing that this isn't an afterthought. This takes planning. These are skills that have been honed over a long period of time. And you can't just ask people at the last minute to sort of show up and throw up some art because it's pretty, right? Adornment is what I call that. Just decorating the tree after the fact.
That's right.
Get the artist there when you're planting the tree.
And you had mentioned before that 60% of creative workers are currently unemployed. Artists in general, you also had mentioned, is tough. Would you consider being an artist a non-traditional occupation, like that deals with specific challenges that typical infrastructure kind of identifies and takes care of?
In many ways, no. I would anticipate actually that the freelance artist has a lot of the same challenges that Voyager Bakehouse has, that we're going to hear from in a minute, right? Which is balancing these administrative needs, right? These building the actual business model, making sure that it's working, doing all of that kind of accounting and making sure you're getting paid and all that, while still investing in your product, which takes creativity and space and time and improvement on your craft all the time. There are so many ways for an artist to make their living, and you can choose or pursue, I could say. Very few get to simply choose. But there are options, and so are you making art for other people? That's kind of a different life, I think, than someone who is moving strictly from a place of creative expression and then sort of putting their wares out for sale. And then, of course, there's arts organizations like ours, which is all about curating arts and kind of putting them all together. But you have the same concerns, right? You have marketing, you have all those functions that every other business has to consider.
That's right. Okay, and then in return to our theme of resilience, so there's a question that came online. In the wake of COVID-19, will performing artists be programming differently moving forward? Like how resilient are artists in the wake of this pandemic? And how do you see artists kind of innovating, to use, lack of use of whatever word, but innovating to kind of to address these stumbling blocks?
So I think of that question in two ways. And the first way I think about it is, coming out of this pandemic, I'm really worried about the infrastructure to catch some of these people. I'm very, very worried about that, actually. So, and that is a question that needs to be answered, I think, before we can actually look at the art that's being made. Now, I guarantee you that all of those who experience the artistic compulsion are at home making things. Right, it is happening. There is art being made, whether the channels have been discovered yet, maybe not. So that's a hard question to answer, how artists will respond. There's a historical instance we could look at, and this is sort of interesting. So if you look at the last pandemic flu in 1918, do I have the year right?
That sounds right.
I think. If you look at, for instance, theater, immediately following that pandemic, there's no mention of it. It's like it didn't happen. And I think it's because audiences were so hungry to come back together again and celebrate, right? So the work tends to be very escapist, very celebratist. You see, it's celebrational. You see that after World War II as well, right? We have a whole body of work, even classical music, theater, musicals. We just had this sort of like age of rainbows and happy endings and big dance numbers. So sometimes artists are reacting to what audiences want. I'm sure we will see work that reflects on this experience. I don't know how much distance is going to be needed.
Yeah, okay. Another question that came in on the interwebs: what's the best way a regular person can get involved in adding to our arts community in Greater Green Bay?
Yeah. I think of this question in two ways as well. So if you're the kind of person who has a particular form that you enjoy, a group, a community group that you enjoy their productions, if there is a If you already have a relationship, I would say simply reach out, and I would say make a donation if you can. I think that is desperately needed. So if there's an existing relationship, I would say ask, what more can I do? I think that, buying a piece of art from a local artist, you would be surprised. I think sometimes people are really afraid about how expensive art is, but in fact we have so many local artists who have really affordable work and now have their galleries online, right, that had not before. So I think that that just simply entering into an exchange with an organization or an artist that resonates with you, that has been important to you, and communicating that to them. And the second thing I would say is, the Brown County Life Study Survey just came out, and I was really happy to see arts and culture questions all over. And I think that actually that 80 to 89 green, right, the development of the Green Bay Public Art Commission, BACA, the convenings, like we're starting to sort of galvanize a little bit here, right? So I think that that's a place that you can go and express what your feelings are about arts and culture in our community and how we're showing it. If you have kids, I would say ask at your school what's going on in terms of arts education. We have a fine arts pathway in our community that is amazing with Webster, Washington, and East. But make sure that your child is getting an education that's well-rounded in that way as well. Okay, and final question: what's in store for us at the Widener Center? A lot of questions have come up. What's going on with the Widener Center? We're really looking forward for the Widener Center. Who better to ask? Thanks for asking. So we'll be continuing to stream some of our programs, some partner programs like Steam Engine that we're happy to have brought in and facilitate some of that. We have an outdoor event coming up in late May, so that's going to go on sale relatively soon. You'll start seeing things about that on our website and our social media. And I feel like I can say this with near certainty. We will have audiences back in the fall. You heard it here first, folks. Now, what we're waiting for is to find out, are we socially distanced? Right. What protocols do we need in place? What protocols do we need in place for our artists? So there are those kinds of things in terms of a safety plan, because what we have to accommodate in terms of distancing especially greatly impacts what we're doing. It impacts the artists that can afford to play in a certain size house, but we will be back. We actually already have a couple of tours that have gone on sale already, so there's a late October event. It will start to see more and more pickup. I feel like by early summer we're going to have a better understanding of what it is we can do. And the Widener Center YouTube platform is a good way to kind of follow along and see what's going on. WidenerCenter.com is you'll definitely see information there, and also on the homepage, I should say, one of the best ways to stay in touch with us is to go to WidenerCenter.com and subscribe to the Widener Wire so that you get those e-blasts, because those have kind of all the additional late-breaking news. I did not mean for this to turn into a conversation or a commercial for the Widener Center, but thanks for asking. We are so thankful that you invited us into your space, and thank you so much for all that you do, Kelli, in our community to further our arts and cultural understanding. Thank you, Kent. It was a real pleasure to be here. Thank you. Okay, so next we have, in our third musical interlude, Isabel Robertson. Take it away.
Sometimes in our lives we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride if I have things you need to borrow,
I don't know
for
about that.
no
I
one can
forgot to say
fill
something that I feel like
those
is
of
really
your
important, which I wanted to
needs that you won't let show. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can carry, I'm right up the road, I'll share your load if you just call me. So just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. Just might have a problem that you'd understand. We all need somebody to lean on. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean